what is basically a report? So based on what we have discussed so far, what do you think if someone's asked you what is a report? So what is the basic thing which comes in your mind? Something which is written in short. It may be lengthy as well, with some objectives, of course, because after all you're writing a report. And there are occasions when you say that this thing has been reported by that person. We watch television and we always see people saying that this thing has been reported, this event or this incident has been reported by the following person. So that is also one form of a report. And then you have the news report, which are basically provided within a newspaper as well. So that is also one form of report. So of course we can make sense that it's a written form of a content. But now looking into the detail of what basically a report is, so the first line to consider here is that it's a structured form of writing. And when I say it's a structured form of writing, it doesn't mean that it has the kind of structure that we people have. No. It means that basically it has a format, and that format or that skeleton is basically giving it a structure. Now that structure can also be related with the headings and subheadings that we have within different forms of writing. So those headings are basically also a structure that is given to our writing. It's a tool. Just the way we have these ribs, we have different bones within our arms and legs. In a similar way, the headings and subheadings have the same significance when it comes to giving a proper structure to your writing. And that's why I would say it's a structured form of writing, because we shall be using those headings and subheadings. However, talking about the very beginning of this concept of report writing, so the three circles which are linked up with one another provides you the basic definition, provides you the basic concept of what basically we do when we talk about the report writing process. So it all begins with, of course, a structured form of writing, but what this structured form of writing is about. So basically, the first thing that we do is that we identify something. Now what do we identify? Basically, we identify a problem. A report is always based on a problem. You identify a problem, and the ultimate goal of that report writing process is to provide some solution in the form of some suggestions and recommendations. So the whole process, due to the same reason, begins with this identification of that problem. Once you are clear about this identification, then comes the next step, that the problem has been identified, but the identification itself is not the ultimate goal. The next step is the examination. You have to examine, you have to look into the detail of that problem, to search for the pros and cons, to study all the factors which are becoming the cause of that problem. And once you know all those factors, only then you would be in a position to provide a solution. Therefore, examination is not just restricted to the analysis, but then you move towards the next step, and that is the organization. And this organization is basically making it a structured form of writing, which you call as the report. So hopefully you have developed the basic concept within your mind, that now I can simply give it a definition as well. A structured form of writing in which you identify a problem, examine it within the detail, and finally provide your solution and recommendation in an organized form using headings and subheadings. hopefully you have developed this concept. That is the basic idea of what basically is a report. Now this is the next thing to consider. When we have understood the basic concept of report writing, the next step is what basically are the characteristics of a report. So you can relate it with those three circles that we have just studied: identification, examination, and organization. And just try to relate it. This relation will also help you to remember and understand these characteristics as well. Now we talked about this structured form of writing. So how do we give it a structure? We give this a structure by the use of headings. And I have already mentioned the significance of headings and subheadings, that together it forms this skeletal system of a report which organizes it into a proper structure, into a presentable form, and that is given to your target audience. The first thing. So how is it structured? It is basically structured by headings. The next thing to consider is that it has independent component sections. Now why am I calling it as independent component sections? Because we'll be discussing and looking into the structure of a report, but for the time being, just to give you an overview, a report has different sections covering under different headings. We have the executive summary, we have the introduction. After the introduction we have discussion, we have the body, we have the conclusion, of course we have results and discussion as well, and then finally we move towards suggestions and recommendations. So each section has its own purpose to perform, and it is directly related to the type of audience that is dealing or that is reading that report. It depends on the reader who has your report. And to make it more easy for you to understand, let's say your boss wants to read your report. So do you really think he or she would be interested to go into each and every detail of what you have provided within the report? He or she can simply just turn over the pages to look at the overall presentation of your report, but the focus would be on the executive summary, just to know how have you progressed or what have you provided within this sample or within this draft, the report. Do you think they have time? I think both of me and you, of course, would agree that they already have to perform so many tasks. They have a tough schedule. So certainly even if they give few minutes of theirs, so that is also considered very precious for us. So therefore their focus would be on the executive summary. Moving onwards, if there are some readers who are good at analyzing and interpreting the statistics, so why would they be interested to look at the basic methodology and the detail and the discussions? No, they just want to look at your figures, the graphs, the charts that you have provided, and they would be able to extract the meaning out of it. They can interpret it on their own. So therefore this section would be standing on its own, independent of all others. Therefore each section has its own worth, and doesn't mean that each section is interdependent on the other sections. Each section can stand on its own. This is the basic point being mentioned and discussed over here. Moving onwards, the third point is related to impartial communication with facts and figures. Now what do we mean by impartial communication? Impartial is something which is objective, which is free from all sorts of subjectivity or biasness, or keeping something neutral. So if we say that if something is objective, that means that your personal opinion or your biasness is totally separate from the provided information, knowledge and the content. And the same is basically expected when we talk about the characteristics of a report. it has to be written in an impartial manner, and it has to be a source of neutral information, or we can call it as objective communication. And how do we make it objective? This is being provided in the right side of this point, and that is with the use of facts and figures. Now this is the point to be considered when we talk about the report writing process, because this is going to be a very important component of your report, because these facts and figures is something that you get after the whole methodology has been applied and after a careful analysis of the subject matter, and based on that careful analysis you get your results. You present your results in the form of some figures, in the form of your graph, some statistics, in the form of some facts. This itself would become the factual information, and factual information is basically considered free from subjectivity. And this is the important characteristic of a report as well. So one thing is being made clear here: when you write a report, you have to write it in an objective manner by avoiding subjectivity. How do you make something objective? By, of course, the application of facts and figures. But there is another angle of looking into this point as well, and that is how to avoid subjectivity. Well, that is something which you can do by avoiding the use of first person, singular and plural. Instead of saying, I did this, I was thinking, I was part of this area, and we did this, this is how it happened, and we came up with a conclusion. No. Instead of giving reference of your own, it was observed, it was done in this manner, so that the focus is not towards you, but the focus remains toward what was done basically, what was the basic target. The subject matter has to remain the focus, and that is how you tilt that focus from your side towards the subject matter. And that is how you make your language objective. That is how you make it free from subjectivity. Hopefully I have made my point clear. Now we can move ahead. So what is expected? What to be expected from that person who is drafting that report, and what expectation should the writer of a report should also keep in mind while preparing that report. Every point which would be mentioned here would also have something to be considered upon, something highlighted, and that is something that I want you to remember as well, because that is something which would help you to draft your own report. Starting from point number 1, if we talk about the first one, of course I have written in red that it's related to a topic. Yes, you need to have a topic, but the topic should be based on a problem-solving hypothetical situation. The situation is not just a situation, but it should be related to a problem which is being analyzed, and your focus is basically to resolve and to solve that, get rid of that problem by providing some suggestions and recommendation. That is the ultimate goal. Therefore, you need to have a topic, and that topic should be based on a hypothetical situation which is based on, of course, a problem. So things are one way or another related with each other. Once this point is clear, now we can move ahead. The second point to consider is the provision of a proposal. That has to be made sure when you want to draft your own report, that you're clear about your purpose. What is the purpose? Purpose is basically a reflection of why you are writing that report.